Welcome to the Careers by Jen podcast, episode 212. On today's podcast, Jen offers suggestions on how to get motivated and do something when you don't want to. Usually at this point in these introductions, I like to come up with a witty or even amusing comment on the theme. But this time, I really just didn't feel like it.
You're listening to the Careers by Jen podcast with me, Jen Swanson, the podcast that helps you to get the job, love your work, and advance your career. It's hanging over you. You know you have to do it, but you don't want to do it. It would be good to have it done. You could relax. You could move on. But wait, there are 15 other things to do now, and you'll get to that one thing later. Maybe. Does this sound familiar? That's what we're going to talk about today, how to get motivated and do something when you just don't want to. I've got 7 suggestions, and we'll start with number 7 right after this.
Are you procrastinating? Do you want to start a job search but aren't quite sure where to begin? Is it all just a little overwhelming? At Careers by Jen, we have a 5-day Jumpstart Your Job Search Challenge to help you get unstuck and move toward finding your dream job. Every day for 5 days, you'll receive an email to your inbox that asks you to complete one task. Every task you complete moves you closer toward your goal. The best part about this challenge is that it's absolutely free. Come over to careersbyjen.com and you'll see the 5-day Jumpstart Your Job Search Challenge on the right-hand side of the screen. Click on the image of Jen, sign up with your email address, and you'll be 5 days closer to reaching your goal. Why wait when you can get busy? Visit careersbyjen.com after this podcast.
The 7th suggestion, working backwards, for how to get motivated and do something when you just don't want to, is to write down the top 3 benefits of actually doing this thing, whatever the thing is, and then putting these top 3 benefits somewhere where you can see them. Focus on these 3 things and keep them somewhere visible. Keep them taped somewhere that you'll see them all the time. Keep them on your screensaver, on your phone. Keep them somewhere where you can remind yourself of the benefits, the top 3 benefits. These positive benefits will be the reasons why you should get moving. And sometimes writing things down physically on paper or making them visible helps to focus your efforts. Ask yourself, how will I benefit from doing this thing? And write down all the reasons of ways that you would benefit, but then highlight the top 3. And if there are more, fantastic. But 3 is an easy number to remember. That's the 7th tip for you, and I'm working backwards. Welcome to Careers by Jen. It's been about 3 weeks since we've published an episode, and I've had to cancel all sorts of commitments and guests and events because my lovely mother-in-law was dying. And then she did head off on her new adventure this past Friday, and we were able to be present with her when she took her last breath. And so that was a privilege and an honor to be able to do that. We also managed to get away on our work trip the last half of January, a pilgrimage that we had planned for months, and we had invited a couple of dozen others to join us on a trip to Israel and Palestine, the Holy Land, on a biblical highlights trip that was amazing and challenging and heart-expanding and heart-wrenching all at once. And for that, for being able to get away on this long-planned trip, I am grateful, because it was touch and go as to whether we felt we could even leave right up until the week that we went. In any case, if you want to see any pictures of the trip, head over to our Instagram page at Careers by Jen, and you'll see a few of the scenes of what we saw when we were over there. It's an incredible, complicated, lush, rich, and fraught part of the world, and we were blessed to bear witness to what we did, from the horrors of the contents of the Holocaust Museum to walking along parts of the oppressive and heartbreaking separation wall in Bethlehem, from the ancient ruins of former empires to tasting wines made from one of the top wineries in the country, from floating in the legendary healing waters of the Dead Sea to the breathtaking views of Masada. It was spectacular, and we'll be processing our experience of it for a long time to come. That wasn't the first time I was there, but it was the first time I had gone in a leadership capacity, and so it was quite an adventure. And so here I am, back in the studio on the snowy West Coast right now, having a tough time getting stuff done because I just don't want to, hence the topic. So thank you for your patience as I was unable to produce shows because of the trip and spending a lot of time visiting and staying over in the hospice. What an amazing bunch of people those staff and volunteers at hospice are. A big shout out to all hospice and palliative care staff and volunteers everywhere, and a particular shout out to the Whatcom Hospice House in Bellingham, Washington. What a blessing you folks are. Thank you also to my listeners for all the lovely messages and notes and prayers and messages that I got from you. You are so appreciated. So let's get into our topic, how to make yourself do something when you don't want to, with the first or the last tip that I mentioned being focusing on the main 3 benefits. Okay, so next tip, number 6, is this: stop making excuses. Our brains are really good at justification and at finding evidence for why your thoughts are correct. But the question is, are they? Perhaps that negative voice inside you is telling you that you might fail or not do a good job anyway, so why bother? Has that ever happened to you? Or maybe it's telling you that it's snowing outside and it might well be too dangerous to drive to the gym. Or it's telling you that you don't yet have all the information you need to complete the task or the project, so why not wait until you are absolutely sure? Well, whatever that chatterbox in your head is telling you, question it, interrogate it, ask it, is this really true? Argue the excuses your mind presents and see what happens. Excuses do not get you any closer to having the top 3 benefits of getting this thing done, whatever this thing is. So number 6 is to just stop making excuses. The number 5 tip for how to get motivated and do something when you just don't want to is to break it up into manageable chunks so that it's not overwhelming. You're not looking at the entire thing and feeling paralyzed or frozen by it, by the magnitude of it. Maybe you can break it down into 5-minute increments or 15-minute increments. Maybe it's in sections depending on what it is you have to do. Maybe it's work related. Maybe it's finding work related, or maybe it's something in your non-work life. Maybe it's getting fit, getting more healthy, going to the gym, if you're going to the gym, put on your work clothes the minute you get up. Don't put on your robe. Don't put on anything else. Put on your workout clothing, and then you're partway there. That's the first thing. If it's writing a report that you're trying to do, open a blank document and write the title page down. Make a title page. And then presto, you will have at least started. Yeah, maybe you don't have any content, but you've done the actions that it takes to begin. I do that sometimes when I'm trying to write a sermon, is I will open up a blank document and I will title it, and I know the scripture piece that I'm using, and I will write all that down at the top. And then sometimes I'll just start typing, and then something will appear, hopefully. So when that first step is done, when that first little chunk that you've broken this big thing down into is complete, then you can do the next chunk of work. It's baby steps. So that is tip number 5. The 4th item follows on this last one, and that is to bribe yourself. I'm not proud. Yes, if you get started on one thing, on whatever it is and you get the first chunk of it done, then celebrate. Take a quick break. Go have a snack, healthy snack. Make yourself some tea or do something short that is fun like social media or something just for a few moments. And then get back to the next step or the next chunk of work, promising yourself another treat as soon as you get that next bit done. All right, so thus far we have writing down the top 3 benefits. That was tip number 7. Stopping with the excuses and arguing with them even. That was number 6. Breaking the task into manageable chunks of work. That was number 5. And number 4 is we have bribing or rewarding yourself, or celebrating is a better way to put it maybe, after you complete at least one step. And then do it again after you complete the next step. And do it again after you complete the next step. All right, so those are 4 things. I've got 3 more tips for you on how to get motivated and do something when you just don't want to. So let's go on to tip number 3. It is to turn off distractions. Turn off your email. Turn off your social media in between if you're supposed to be doing this chunk of work. Heck, turn off your phone altogether and or put it in a different room and focus on the one bit of work that you have decided to work on. Give it your full, mindful attention. There is no such thing, by the way, as multitasking. It was a big thing a number of years ago, and then they decided there is no such thing. It is impossible to do more than one thing at a time and to focus on more than one thing at a time. So forget the idea of multitasking. It actually doesn't work. Don't kid yourself. Your brain cannot do more than one thing at a time. So choose to focus only on the task at hand. Shut out all other distractions. And I tell you, time will move a lot faster than if you allow what might take you a relatively short amount of time to expand into 3 or 4 times as long because you keep interrupting yourself to check Facebook. And I speak from experience. Just turn it off, close the browsers, close it off, and if you're working on a computer and get on with the thing that you need to be doing that you're putting off. All right, tip number 2 on how to get motivated and do something is to change your physical circumstance. Change it enough that you are less comfortable and less likely to fall into your old procrastinating habits, because procrastination is a habit. And there are certain things that we do when we are procrastinating. And I know I have my habits, and I'm sure you have yours as well. So if you change your physical circumstance, then perhaps you will change the way you do the whole thing. If you can't focus sitting down, then try standing up. If you normally are standing up, try sitting down. If you need to move to a quieter location or take yourself off into another area where you can think and find focus, then do so. If it's a case of creating content of some kind, maybe you're trying to write a resume or a cover letter if you're a job seeker, or maybe it's a report that you have to write or put a presentation together, or maybe you're putting numbers together that you have to sort out. Is there a place, an environment that you could do that in that is different than your usual one? I know that if I have to write something and I want to do it in a short amount of time with no distractions, I actually take myself off to a coffee shop. I end up feeling self-conscious about taking up too much time at the table, so I work hard and in a focused way, of course, while enjoying a hot beverage of some kind. But I love the noise and the hustle and bustle of a coffee shop, and for some weird reason, I can work really well there, more so than in a quiet house. I used to do this while in university. If I had a paper to write or I had some reading I had to do, I would take myself off to a coffee shop, and man, I got a lot of stuff done. So I don't know why. You might just be the opposite. You might be better working in a quiet environment. So maybe find a library, but somewhere that's not a place where you can distract yourself with other things that might need doing in your house. Because for me, all of a sudden, things like washing toilets and doing dishes, which I don't like doing either of those things, but those things become much more interesting to do than actual the work that I'm supposed to be doing. I decide to clean out the fridge or do something, wash some clothes or do something ridiculous when I should be sitting down and focusing. So if I take myself off to a coffee shop or somewhere else, then I find that I can work far more efficiently. And so try that, because whatever you've been doing the whole time that you've been procrastinating has not been working. So you need to change it up. So that is tip number 2, change your physical circumstance. And if you're in an office and you have to work in that office, again, try standing up if you normally sit, or try moving to a different area in the office if you can. Just something to change your physicality, which can often refocus you. The very last tip, which is number 1 on my list of 7 tips, is to give yourself a time limit and then jump in that pool. Now, I mentioned earlier floating in the Dead Sea on our trip. It was January. And in Israel, in January, it was only about 20 degrees Celsius out, which is 68 degrees Fahrenheit. And believe me, the water was a lot colder than that. That was the weather outside. The water was colder than that. And yet most of our group wanted to experience floating in a lake that is 33% minerals in content and, ancient healing properties. So bathing suits on and into the very cold sea. It's not really a sea, but it's called the sea. Now, you have to know about me that I hate cold water. I despise being cold. I very, very rarely swim or get into water in the summer unless it's a hot tub or unless it's very, very warm water. I don't like being cold. But there I was, so I gave myself a time frame, and finally I just went under. And if I'm still using this as a metaphor for you, it was a lot better once I had gotten in. I was pleased. I was floating in the Dead Sea, and I was really glad that I did it. So often what happens is we procrastinate, and then we worry and we fuss about the fact that we're procrastinating, and this thing is still hanging over you that has to be completed. And it's not as bad as you imagine it to be once you actually get into it. There's a certain satisfaction about doing it. So give yourself a deadline by which your procrastination must end, and just jump in. It's funny, the mind tricks that we have to play with ourselves. Hey, we are odd creatures for sure. Well, thank you for listening, my friends. And if all goes well, everything at this end, there should be no reason why there won't be a podcast happening next week. I have a number of interesting guests lined up that I hope to bring you. A couple of them I had to cancel and reschedule because of what happened, and we have a memorial service to get through on the weekend. But after that, the podcast should be back on its normal schedule. So thanks again for your patience. I so appreciate you. And I'm so pleased that you're listening to Careers by Jen. Please share and spread the word about the show. And until next time, take good care. You've been listening to Careers by Jen with Jen Swanson. If you like what you heard, please share this. If every single person listening today shared this episode with just one friend, our audience would be twice as big just like that. And the more people we can help with our content, the better. So help out a friend and help grow our audience by sharing this show with someone you know who would benefit from the content. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that, and together we can make a difference. Until next time, take good care.